children begin role playing from the time they're little tiny tots. My little granddaughter has got the imagination of, oh my goodness, and is constantly telling stories, and her toys are doing amazing things. But, that is not something that we have to grow out of. And it actually can be used as a teaching tool to just go a lot further. And I am so excited about what we're going to be talking about today. Hi, I'm Donita from prairie-trail.com, and I've got our oldest and homeschool graduate, Catherine, now White, who is a wife and mother, and she's over at the Okie Dokie Explorers. And I like to let my guests introduce themselves. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Anthony, and I actually am a homeschool dad. I have 12 children with my wife of 25 years, and we are, I saw some of your streams, and I thought I was going to get to jokingly say to some of your ladies that, well, I hate to one-up you literally, but you have a couple 11s, I think. One has 12 on the way, right?
She just had number 12.
Had number 12.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I told my wife, I said, well, there's a couple of them there that I'd say I watched a couple streams. I said, I'd have to say, well, I hate to one-up you, literally.
Yeah, out here in the Panhandle, the Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, as far as homeschooling families, ours is small.
Okay.
Ours is a small homeschooling family. Our doctor has 12, and most of them have 8 or more.
Maybe we're in the wrong state up here in Ohio. I'm in Ohio, Central Ohio.
Okay. Yep. Well, you might want to wait until fire season's over to think about moving.
I think we're fine where we're really happy where we're, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah. It is nice. It is nice to have a lot of like-minded people in the area. One thing that we definitely, you've always got in communities things that you disagree with, right?
Sure, yeah.
And as Catherine was getting over toward the high school, and she's a 91 model, and when she was getting up toward the high school age, her and some homeschoolers do have friends, were writing letters back and forth, and they were princesses of kingdoms, and they were writing letters about what was going on in each of their kingdoms.
Wonderful.
And I realized that they were role playing.
Yeah.
And at that point, with them being the age that they were and stuff, I saw some dangers. And it became concerning to me because, of course, I knew nothing about like D&D other than the Tom Hanks movie that, from the 80s.
Yes. Play D&D, you'll lose your mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so I went to probably the worst place to go was focus on the family. Printed out a whole bunch of information about role playing and stuff. The other parents did not take me seriously at all. And the dangers that I saw, we did end up having problems with.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately, Catherine, who actually knew what she was doing because I did the research and we talked about it.
Yeah.
Catherine got blamed, unfortunately. And it was just unfortunate ignorance that was going on that Christians do not understand.
It turned into one of those scenarios where Christians got sucked into something that was a lot of fun, and then soon as they had to role play a situation that they were not even comfortable thinking about, it became a problem. And it wasn't like necessarily a bad situation.
Nothing bad. Yeah,
it was something that they had just been told was taboo to even think about.
Okay.
And it was really quite ridiculous. It was like one of the princesses was navigating a potential suitor who she really didn't want a relationship with because he turned out to be a toxic person. And all the other girls were like, why are we even talking about this? And it's like, because it happens. And then lo and behold, one of them ended up in her own toxic relationship in real life later. So she's having to learn how to navigate that in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was one of those situations where it's, again, a lot of Christians do not like to touch difficult topics that they don't know the answers to.
Yeah.
And rather than say, I don't know, let's figure this out together, it was just,
Well,
let's
and
not even touch it.
that's very good. That not that this it it kind of relates to our topic, so yeah, we'll go here. But whenever some people don't know, because I'm not in the middle of a bunch of homeschooled families, and we do stand out with the home births and all those things, so when some people don't understand our lifestyle, they often will use the word sheltered and talk about our children as if our children just don't experience anything any other way and aren't exposed to life or anything. And it's like, I still go to the store. They still go to youth groups. We still do things, and our philosophy is like my one son, Anthony, was really into games when he was young, and he was a young kid, like 8 maybe or so. And he was able to play at an adult level on games, like some card games and things like that. So I'd take him with me to a card shop, and there were mixed people there, all kinds of different people. And some of them had foul mouths, that were unhinged. And I kindly asked them, just remember, we do have a check, because it's a public store. It wasn't like it's a closed event, it wasn't inappropriate for me to have my child there,
Right.
And so I'd ask them if it was excessive. But if it wasn't excessive, my son, we talked about it, and those weren't words he was allowed to say, and I wasn't repeating them, and that's all. And then we go to the grocery store, and somebody's checking us out, and this is when this first started happening, and our kids were literally confused because the checkout seemingly boy had the painted fingernails and had makeup and things like that, and things that clearly stated that they were not thinking of themselves as a boy. And so we didn't go to a different checkout line. We went through the checkout line, and when our kids had questions afterwards, we talked about it, and and we just gave them our perception. So our way of looking at life is not to shelter and protect our kids from having experiences. The world exists, and of course not age appropriate experiences and things like that. Yes, protect them from that. But when it's just the world and things the way society is or people are, it's, let's not shield you from it. Let's be there with you when you encounter it.
Right.
So that we can talk about it and give you our perspective on it.
Communication.
Rather than you experience it when we're not around and not tell us about it, and then you're figuring it out on your own, or with kids, with your peers that have no more life experience than you do.
Right.
Exactly.
Communication is so important.
It really is. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're, we're out here farm and ranch and oil field.
Okay.
And talking about the language. My husband, he's a preacher's son. He's never cussed a day in his life. I was raised in the thick of it. So he calls it the old language whenever I slip. But our children, people would say, well, you're sheltering them. And it's like, we
could have more real conversations that other kids our age were just like,
exactly,
about, could not handle or had no clue about.
Adults love interacting with my family because they're just, the kids can engage with an adult and are open and can talk and have, what I'm saying? They're not just hide behind somebody and
Right. Well, and I've had a few shy ones. I was very shy.
Sure, and that's not
we had 2 that were very shy. And then 4 that have never known a stranger in their lives. So different personalities, but as far as them, they're basically all adults now. Our youngest is 17, and they are perfectly capable of handling even emergency situations.
Yes, and that's more what I was referencing, right?
Yes.
When it's, they may not sit there and have the full conversation, some of the more shy ones, but they're not doing this.
Yes. Yeah, they're out there able to communicate with people. That's
Yeah,
the
and
main
then
part.
like the
Even
adult
if they
caution and
have a
oh,
really
mhm,
shy, yeah,
Exactly.
even if they have a really shy
exactly.
personality, they can communicate.
They can make eye contact, say, answer a question, ask their own question, and then
Yes,
when
and
okay,
have
now
the
I'm going to go
critical
somewhere else.
thinking. And
Yes,
that's the thing with the really shy ones is that they have
they're
more
absorbing.
aptitude for the really critical thinking
Yes,
on things
Yeah,
and
they're
our
really asking the hard questions.
our quietest son is we're 6 and 6, by the way. So I like to say I literally have again the literal here.
Avery,
I
you go.
literally have 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So I mean, that's
There you
great.
go.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it's our quietest is a boy, and he is just the deepest thinker, though. Yeah, and he's observing, and
Yeah, ours too. Ours too. Um, yeah, now that he's a 2000 model, so him and your
I
Anthony
love
would be
your
the
way
same
of
age.
saying that.
Yeah, that's the only way I can keep track is
That's
the
funny.
model.
I've
But
never done the number thing, but we have one that I wanted to say when we had 9 children and Star Trek and all that stuff. We had 9 children, and there's one I said, you're actually 7 of 9, right? Literally on the
love
So
Oh,
I,
that's
I
perfect.
jokingly referred to him as that, and I did it just a couple times.
it.
That's
I didn't want him to remember that forever, but
Right. Well, this is one of the reasons that I am so excited about this. I am a member of a Christian Gamers Guild, which is one of those old-fashioned Yahoo email groups. If you know, you know. If you're younger, I'm sorry. It's okay. But so I'm on there basically with a bunch of guys. There's not very many of us girls in that group. And I love I'm off and on again in there, but uh we've got pastors and just people of all ages that like to play role-playing games, including Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, there are pastors that play Dungeons and Dragons. And
And this
Anthony
might
has,
be a good point to remind some people who don't like Dungeons and Dragons and think that if you play that, you're going to go to hell. Role playing is a tool for the brain.
yes,
Therapists have to use it all the time to help patients with extreme mental health issues, help them role play out their situations so that their brain can unlock what is going on and learn how to navigate whatever situation they are in. And it's the same way with the games. It puts us in a different environment where we feel safe with no consequences, really, none in the physical, to be able to try different things and experience. Okay, if I do A, what is the consequence of A? If I do
right,
B, what is
right,
the
right.
consequence of B? And it happens on the tabletop, but not in real life. And you can go, okay, so if I'm a jerk to the NPC and then I don't get what I want, maybe I shouldn't be a jerk to people in real life either, because then I'm not going to get what I want. You
yes.
know?
Yeah, I have an anecdote later if we get to it. Once people understand a little more of the game, several from when I was a youth pastor and was introducing this game. But along with that, in therapy, that's another aspect of the same thing you were saying, is that therapists, one of the best tools they do is they try to get people to view. I mean, okay, the Bible exemplifies this very same thing. Nathan the prophet comes to David after he's had,
Yep.
and he's taken Bathsheba and had her husband killed and all that. And he tells him a story, and David's outraged by this story. He says, "Yeah, well, that's you." And then he's realized,
Exactly.
like, oh my, getting people to see their situation as an observer looking in and not as themselves, not being skewed by because whenever we're in, how many people know the toxic relationship or whatever, when you're outside it and you're looking at it, you see the obvious right, most of the time, the obvious right,
Right.
answers or right way to handle it. But the person in it has all these exceptions.
Yes.
And we all are that way.
Yes, we are.
So when we help, but you don't know this, or you didn't account for that, or yeah, but he's so nice, or whatever. Sometimes, or whatever.
Right.
But the thing is, but he loves me literally, and then secretly and unstated, and nobody else has told me how much they love me, or whatever.
Right.
But the thing is, when you see it from the outside, you can see it with more clear eyes. And getting people to see their own situation in third party really changes things, and that's another advantage of the role playing environment. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and that is one of the things that really, spiritual warfare is something that a lot of people do not understand. I was raised in the New Age, so I understand the reality of demons. I absolutely understand it. In a way that a lot of people who have been raised in the church do not get, because they've been taught that so much is just myths and legends and folklore.
Well, Santa Claus, I'm gonna affect your behavior by talking to you about the boogeyman. Or
right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they, I've seen, especially this generation that is into adulthood right now and starting to become parents, their parents, the boogeyman, the monster under the bed, the monster in the closet, things like that, their parents is like, that doesn't exist. It's just a figment of your imagination, just put it off. And those children were left with a fear that they were led to believe was unrealistic and unwarranted, and a lot of times keep taking that with them. Whereas me completely understanding that stuff is real, anytime my children had the least bit of a fear or a nightmare or anything, I had the Bible open to Psalm 91 right next to their bed. We would read through it. We would pray. And, we started, and I've said on my channel several times, I don't pray a hedge of protection around us. I pray a bubble of protection. And Catherine has literally had people bounce off of her bubble before.
Wow.
So spiritual warfare is something I think the church, and I'm talking the people of the church, not a physical thing, need to learn, because things aren't getting better. And you should be able to go through the grocery store and have that you're not sure person and be able to bring some light to their lives, because that's what they need. They need understanding. They're there in that situation because somebody did not take the time. Somebody did not have a conversation that needed to be had, whatever it was. And
I think a lot of Christians, you have like the one extreme that it's kind of just made up and it's just the boogeyman story and whatnot. And, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And then you have the other side that's very charismatic. And it's like, I bind the devil in Jesus' name, And
if you have the sniffles, it's because of a demon. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you have both sides of this extreme spectrum, and one side doesn't think it exists. And then the other side, like outsiders are looking at them going, what kind of drugs are you on? So, but then both sides, neither one can very well explain what spiritual warfare is, much less visualize it. And I remember the first time I got into D&D and I like really hyper focused on it, and I memorized the monsters manual and everything. I was like, this is so cool. And playing it for the first time and stuff, I remember one time saying, this would be awesome to try and figure out how to turn a D&D game into learning about spiritual warfare, because the D&D people put their research into it, and so many of the creatures and demons that you encounter are based on real life things and things that we do know about. So it's like, this would be awesome. And I was super excited whenever my mom told me about your stuff. I was like, finally.
Well, the way when I first thought of this, so this sounds young, but I used to make my mom when I was a kid, please read, and I'd make her read Revelation to me, so like this sounds young, but this is when it was on and it wasn't reruns. So when I was probably about 8 years old, when the D&D cartoon was on originally, like when it was actually on, I watched it Saturday morning, and I was like everybody, not everybody necessarily, but I mean, like most people are, drawn in because it's fantastical, it's foreign a little bit, and it's that spiritual or magical. I'll just lump them together. Spiritual and or magical things stimulate the curiosity because they're things we don't understand.
Yeah.
And so there's a draw to them. And I was drawn and interested. I mean, it's the same kind of thing you do with Star Wars too, like episodes 4 through 6. This is interesting and new and foreign to us. You know what I mean? Things that you don't understand and just readily have your mind around. A large portion of people are attracted to that, you know? And so I thought, man, I just didn't feel right myself personally, as even at that age. I just kind of wasn't sure about some of the things that seem occultish. I'll just say that, without making a one way or the other, that feel occultish about it. When I was a kid watching the cartoon, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be good if there was something like that, stories like that, that would somehow point to God and real spiritual realm? Because I'm like, the spirit realm is kind of magical, you know. And I was like, but then I thought about it. Okay, and this is the part where it's like, were you really 8? But yeah, okay. I thought about it, and all I knew in the Bible was, I was like, well, there's Michael named, you know, these angels, and I was like, and there's Gabriel, and I couldn't think of, and now I know there really aren't any in the canon, any other in the Protestant canon, named angels. And I was like, well, that's Michael's kind of a warrior because he does a lot of fighting, and Gabriel will be a messenger because he, you know, delivers all this news all the time. But that's like your hardy guy and your fast guy, and I'm like, but that's just fighting. And I was like, that get boring after a while, and I just dismissed it. And then when I was holding my child, my first child, Anthony, I'm not even thinking about it. I've dropped it since that time. This is, like I said, I was probably about 8. By this time, I'm about 24, and I'm holding him, walking around, and in my head pops, and I believe it's God, but comes in 2 more types of ministering spirit and minstrel. And the ministering spirit's kind of the cleric class like idea, and the minstrels, bards weren't popular back then, so it feels a little more wizardy, but is kind of a wizardy bard kind of thing. And so I was like, oh, well, now it's interesting. And I sat down and started banging it all out. But yeah, that was exactly my motivation, was there's got to be something. And I desired in my heart something that would point people to God.
Right. Yeah. And that was something that I really tried with a lot of my homebrew campaigns that I ran before I had a toddler.
Yeah.
Is, you know, and that's the thing, reminding viewers, listeners right now, that role play is a tool and you have the power. It is in your control. So you can, there is so much information out there on how to homebrew things now and make these things. It is like, we have so much at our disposal now.
Yeah.
And so there is no excuse for Christians to not be putting stuff out like this.
Yeah.
And to be building games.
And even if you're using the games that are available, I know there's been times that we've gone through a game and I'm like, okay, I haven't played a cleric yet, but I don't want to have one of these gods.
Yeah.
I want to have, you know, my god, of course, and instead of, you know, spells or incantations, I want to do this a little differently and treat it more like a prophet. You know, Elijah did some pretty amazing things, and so did Elisha. So, if, you know, there are heroes. So,
right.
You know, I want to be like Elijah and Elisha. And you absolutely can. You can talk to your game master, the person that is running the game, and say, hey, can I do that? Doesn't make any difference with the mechanics of the game. It's just the way you're playing it. So for the most part, it's not going to matter. But you know, you can have your boundaries and play things. You know?
Yeah.
But I love the way because I wouldn't have thought about doing it this way. And we got together, some of us, and you ran a game for us, just a bare bones of this that you're developing. And we assigned each of us an angel to be a watcher, whatever you want to call them. And, you know, we go to save a family with there's demons tormenting them, causing the little children to fight. I mean, we can all relate to this, causing the mom to kind of have a bad day. She's dropping everything and stuff.
To clarify, they're not, and not to clarify, but more so to make I think it's an important point is when you say tormenting them, it's like things that most people would take as
just a bad day.
Just a bad day. And it's not that every bad day you have is, oh, you must be like no demon under the rock.
Right, yeah.
But at the same time, there can be accentuations to your situation that you're not recognizing the source of it sometimes.
Yes.
And it's so it's not, I guess I was going the other direction of by tormenting him, it's not like they're like, got him on a rack and
yeah.
at the same time too, it's like, it's just
they're just poking right.
It's one of those a personal experience of mine is that I've heard a lot of people say, well, the devil made me do it. And I'm like, devil don't need to make you do nothing that you can do for yourself. We are perfectly capable of doing things ourselves. But not too long ago, about, I want to say 3-4 years ago, we had just moved into this house and I kept there was this awful smell and I could not figure it out. It seemed like I was the only person who would smell it. And I was going through stuff, cleaning things out. And I happened to see our teenager's journal fell open and said that she had made a Ouija board and had stored it. And I was like, really? And found it, sure enough, and everything. And like when I found that and started taking care of it, I literally, a kerosene lamp fell off the wall on a stable shelf. And it was a deep shelf made for this kerosene lamp. It should not have fallen off. It fell off and shattered the base. Usually the globe breaks on them first. The globe did not break, the base shattered, and then literally at the same time, the light bulb above popped and spread sparks everywhere. And I was like, somebody needs to come over and pray with me right now. And as soon as we just prayed over the house and everything, the next day, that weird smell that had been there for months was gone. So it's not every bad day is blamed on a demon, but there's some days and some things, little things that can
connect.
That's
actually one of the things I want to do. We may be getting ahead of the course, or ahead of the horse here, but one of the things that I'm really wanting to do is not just open people's mind to that this can be a reality, but also in my material that I put out, make sure that not every sickness is, or make sure that not every situation is. But also because you talked about the extremes. There's the people that nothing is, and then there's the people, that everything is, and just help them see in the middle. Not that I'm saying I'm right and I know everything, but saying that help them each kind of see the balance.
The possibilities.
The possibility. Because that's what the role-playing games are. For some of the people that have concerns about it being fiction or not, they're really, you're not trying to be literal in all of it. You're trying to just make an imagination playground so that you can explore things. Because role-playing is big in sales too. And the reason is because when you encounter this objection or you encounter this situation, you don't want it to be the first time and you're deer in the headlights and you don't know how to handle it. You like, oh yeah, I remember encountering that before, and this is how I think is a good way to respond or answer.
Yep. And whenever I was in customer service, we did that.
Why do we run fire drills?
Exactly.
Why do we do any other situation like that where we're testing when this happens? We want you to have some kind of a framework for what to do or how to deal with it.
Muscle memory.
Yeah,
exactly. Muscle memory.
And so the same thing.
I've also found with my kids, like doing just some of the D&D games I would put together for them, when they could visualize it, that took a lot of the fear out of it.
Yes.
There.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So is it okay if I share my screen, Mom, and show share the his website?
Yeah,
and that way people can visualize Let me see if I can figure this out.
And while they're doing that, I guess we should, clarify what you had said before. That in my game, you're instead of taking on a human character in a fantasy, world, it's our world. It's a fictional representation of our world, but it's our world that we all, anytime, any culture. It can be ancient, it can be near future, anytime, between creation and the end of time, and any culture you want, but the characters play these spiritual beings, these holy spiritual beings that are loyal to God, and they are playing them. And what they do is that world keeps a consistent, and this is important, I guess, and this is hard for people to kind of get their head around. It keeps a consistent ancient Near Eastern or Hebrew biblical feel. It keeps a feel of the way things are described or portrayed in the Bible and in ancient writings related to the time of the Bible. And so even
Which
if you're
makes
playing,
it a good historical
it is.
thing as well as just spiritual. So if you have unbelieving
Yes.
friends that you would like to play a game with, you can definitely get into the historical.
Yes.
Even non-Bible believers are starting to really be fascinated
Yes.
with some of this ancient stuff. And it's a real opportunity to just introduce the unseen realm.
Yes. I had like looking at that picture, for example, this wasn't the banner I have up, but I take it to like Origins, for example. I've taken it to game cons and play, and not everybody that signs up is Christian. I've had quite a few agnostic and atheist players. And traditionally I've even had like Wiccan and stuff like that, but people that play it, and the comments I got just from this last year at Origins too was they were afraid it might be cringy. They were curious about the 7D12 system, because for people that know role-playing games, that's a completely unique thing. It's not the way other games are run. So they were curious about that. They were afraid it might be cringy because they could see it clearly had religious connections or biblical connections. But from their words was the focus on the ancient perspective from the spiritual realm allowed them to engage with it and feel comfortable, because they weren't humans running around Bible thumping people and trying to. They were these angelic beings, and they were trying to do things that they can imagine angelic beings doing. And the ancient feel let them engage with it like a Greek mythology game or a Roman or a Norse mythology game or something like that, even if they didn't believe it. But they did stop the game a few times and ask me questions and want to, does the Bible really say that? Or, oh, I didn't know that, and they wanted to know. And then, so at the end, they're like, and it wasn't cringy. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I learned some stuff, is what they said.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, if this makes them want to get into the Bible and or like the Book of Enoch, because I feel like the Book of Enoch is going to lead people to the Bible.
Yeah.
And if something like this is going to help lead people, just look into it. That's a pretty amazing thing. And if it can help believers to dig a little deeper into their Bibles, the read the Bible through in a year and going to church 2 or 3 times a week will not give you that in-depth study.
I lived it. I know. I didn't do that.
Every time I read scripture, it doesn't matter how many times I've read the same scripture, something new is going to pop up. It is a living word. So, and things like this can help give you a perspective and open up preconceived notions that we've got.
Yes.
So that God can speak to you more clearly.
Yes. And that's, I heard you mention this name on the other, one of the streams I watched. But Dr. Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, that's the thing, is trying to get people in the mindset. And this is what's happened for me in more recent years, is getting in the mindset of the culture of the people that wrote these things and the people that they were written to. They're written for all of us, but they're not written to all of us, And so if we can understand that culture, the more we can, the more we understand references. I use Superman as an example, and this may be a horrible example for some people and great for others. But most people understand with Superman, we understand kryptonite or Fortress of Solitude or some references like that. I can just imagine what somebody 2,000 years from now trying to understand what this Fortress of Solitude might mean symbolically, or, you know what I mean? What metaphor are they using? It's like, no, it's just that's what he called his house, in the Arctic. And it's like, it's really just a pop culture reference. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
If we understand the references more, we understand why they referenced it more, and we get it instead of over analyzing these words and taking meanings that were never intended sometimes.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Heiser had interest in this. He really wanted to help me with this. And then COVID hit, and we were corresponding. And then, unfortunately, as many of you would know, is pancreatic cancer. And then that was that. But his wording of why he really wanted to see this game come about was because, and he doesn't play role-playing games, but he likes Stranger Things, as many of you may know, and he knows that they reference it a lot there, and he's had an interest in role-playing games like that, just never played them himself. But he was like, this is a great avenue to get my content in front of people that may not pick up my books.
Yes.
And that was, his excitement about the project.
Yeah.
And
it
really does. It's a gateway into it being, even for Christians or non-Christians. Like you said, you can be a Christian and not really understand your Bible. It's a gateway to open up interest in the Bible.
Yes. And that's what, we have as Christians, we tend to have this preconceived notion of what evangelism looks like and leading people to Christ. And, it's usually just opening up a conversation. And definitely for the people I hang out with, like this opens up so many good conversations.
It's like having a meal together. It achieves the same, but I'd say a little more. When you have a meal together, you have discussion, and it's like breaking bread together as a tradition in the church.
Yeah.
And so it's similar, but it's more engaging and interactive as well. And especially for men, I think men like to do something together. And so traditionally we have a lot of women that play the game or girls that play the game, but they also have their little side conversations going while we're playing, which is fine. And the guys are intent in seeing what's going, and they're intent in the story. And so we're all enjoying it together. We're just enjoying it different ways. But it's a very social, interactive, engaging thing that breaks down board games and table. Any of these kind of games really break down barriers socially. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they do. And that's, that's the thing. Like, I have two friends who they consider themselves agnostic. One of them grew up in the faith and left it and has more Wiccan leanings now. So they don't deny the existence of God, but they just don't believe he plays a crucial part, or that there's many ways to God. Yeah. And my friend, the one that grew up in the faith, was pushed away from the faith, from the church, because her parents did not get into their Bible. They were Bible thumpers, not Bible readers. And that is something that so many Christians need to be reminded, that if you aren't getting into the word, and if you're not getting your kids excited about it and getting them into it, they're going to leave. They're going to leave. And the sad reality is that when they leave Jesus, the relationship, they leave a lot of joy and peace behind too.
Well, most people that leave or that are church hurt or other things like that, in those cases, I usually see that they've encountered poor representatives of people that want to be, or sometimes, I'm not saying they aren't all of them, but poor representatives that are claiming to be his people, but they haven't really encountered Jesus. They haven't really encountered God. They just had bad experiences with people representing him, whether accurately or not. You know what I'm saying? Whether, you know what I mean?
When those representatives are people that you love, and people you were close to. And it's easier to blame God than it is to blame those people.
And if they use the Bible as a tool kind of like a wooden spoon or something, to whip you with. You know what I mean? They use a tool to it's a weapon, a tool of punishment or warning and all those things instead of something
and when you're nitpicking,
love and engaging.
As they start learning some of these other things, because there's more people, there's so much information out there now. And as they begin learning about the spiritual realm and the possibilities, then, it may be an allure, but it may also being lied to or not given the whole truth of the word of God.
Yes. Giving pat answers that you haven't researched and aren't accurate anyway. And you're just, well, I was told this and I'm repeating it. Along with what you were saying, it triggered something and it was kind of good, but I think I'm losing it now.
Happens all the time
here.
I
know. Yeah, you had said something about with information that's out and you can research and all this stuff. If it comes back up, I'll
well, I see a lot of young people on TikTok right now that are deconstructing.
Yeah.
And to an extent, I can see a need for that because the church has become a lot more of an organization than I think the Lord ever meant for it to be.
That's my personal feeling too, but
And and I'm not putting down, people specifically or anything, but we've got a lot of churchianity going on. Mm-hmm. And
we got a whole lot of religion and not a lot of people.
I'm going to tip my hand, and this may get me in trouble, but if somebody that isn't of your group stumbles onto this, they may judge me on this, but I think from what I understand, your audience may appreciate this. I wrote a book that I've never published, and I never fully finished it. But it was God was really showing me. I was a youth pastor for a while, and I grew up in the church, and my wife grew up in the church, and all of that. And God really was just opening my eyes and showing me a lot of stuff. And I tend to be more like, okay, what I learn, I'm going to practice myself, and I'm not going to judge other people by it. That's on to God to lay it on their heart, like with opening and closing the womb. For us, we felt like that was something He laid on us, and so to disobey it for us would be sin. But we're not going to preach it to everybody else that they've got to do this or they're sinning. It's not laid out clearly in the Bible for them. That's sin is that elevating your own will and your own desires above God to make it.
Right. Well, like Dr. Michael Heiser and Gary Wayne says a lot, there's no smoking gun verse on a lot of things that we consider.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, in that, the things that I focused on were, and this also, remember, this came from a perspective of being not in a mega church, but in a fairly large church, being a youth pastor and on staff multiple times, but especially one of those. It's that the over focus on the Sunday morning service. Okay, that's one. So much time and effort is given, or whatever day you have it, but is put toward the preparation and performance of the service, where we get our money to pay the funds. And then another thing was money and what we do with money and what are tithes and where do offerings go and what are we supposed to do with these things and how we govern finances and what we spend it on. So I think there's a lot of, we're not preaching a lot of the Levitical law or other things, but boy, we preach tithe and how you're robbing the storehouse because we need
cherry picking. Cherry picking is a problem.
And I'm not saying that we don't. New Testament, everything is God's. They realized that nothing was their own, So anyway, I'm not going less on that. I'm going more. But anyway, the focus on money and what we do with it, and then having, and I called it that chapter, the paramount pastor, putting so much emphasis on pastors to the point that we create priests instead of having our own high priest. They are not elders that are with us and we have our arm around each other. We're pointing up to God. Instead, I'm standing, imagine we got the Allies of Majesty thing here. This is not going to work with my mic. but it's like I'm describing that symbol to you. And I'm telling you all about it and what it looks like. And it's got these wings and the sword, and it's around the earth because of this, but you can't see it because I'm in between you and it. And instead, if I'm like this and we're both pointing to, and you can tell me things about it and I can tell you things about it. And if something happens to me and I need help, I can get help and not crush your faith because your faith is only based on my testimony to you
Right.
of what this is behind me,
Exactly.
you know, and
That's a
things
good
like that. So the emphasis on pastors. And then the last one was the problems we have because of being an organization rather than a movement. It brings a lot of, you know, you have to have a form for this and get approval for that. And I know God laid on your heart to do this ministry to these people, but it might look bad on our church. And I'm not sure if we want to allow you to do it because you're a member of our church.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of Paul being like, Jesus told me to preach, I went to preach. It was a little while before I went to you disciples and talked to you guys. You know, I'd been preaching for a minute before I did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
People regularly, you know, I disagree with myself on a regular basis, so I'm definitely not expecting
Sure.
anybody, because people do that with like YouTube creators and stuff too,
Yeah.
that they almost idolize the YouTube creator.
Yeah,
And if you
yeah.
have a YouTube creator that it's like, oh my goodness, something's been revealed to me out of the Bible that now I'm studying deeply about this particular perspective, and
Yeah.
it rocks their boat. And you've
Yeah.
got people in the comments, you know, that Christians can be so mean to each other.
Oh, yeah. I expect far more resistance to this game from Christians than I do from non-Christians. Although I do in this culture, because there are some things that I'm not going above and beyond to represent and include because they just don't have any place in the ancient narrative.
Right.
I mean, like, for example, I mean, even with angels, I'm making the choice not to go gendered and ethnic, because angels are not gendered and ethnic. They're, you know, and so in English, I do, whenever I can, generically on a player or a character, I mean, I'll refer to it as a they or them, there, you know, not because of trying to be inclusive, but just because it's an English gender neutral terms, you know.
Right.
But if I have a named one, I won't say Gabriel and they, it's Gabriel, he, just like it is in the Bible, and they translate it, and I'll just go with that, you know.
Right.
But like, okay, I'll just say, like, on in the actual gameplay, like if you guys wanted to play, my wife and daughters and a lot of the girls like to have a character that's feminine. And it's easier to role play. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that our canon art and canon things isn't going to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like, I'll even on the art that I present for people to buy to make their characters, I'll probably have some of that, because that's user focused, not canon lore focused.
Right.
But as far as the canon lore, if we write novels and stuff, we won't broach that, because we're not trying to be inclusive. We are trying to be representative of the ancient stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But you know, like one game called Deliverance, which is a board game, and he has angels and demons in it. And I love the guy. We're friends. He's going to be doing some work for me and some stuff, you know, his company, I'll hire him. But he chose to go that route, kind of like Frank Peretti in his novels. He went ethnic, but I don't think he went gendered. Frank did. But this guy, you know, his characters are ethnic and gendered and representative, but he wanted them to be relatable. And for his board game, that's fine. I'm doing it for characters, but not for the lore, you know. So
Right. Yeah,
I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's the other thing, is I'm also not going, since we're on it, I'm not going medieval. I'm not going all these other things, myths that people, you know, or ways that people view. There's been several things that celebrate and talk about the spirit realm in those realms. You know, very basically stuff we'll find in the later patristic ideas and their charts of angels and what are and what aren't, and how their hierarchy is. I don't go there. I'm looking at ancient stuff. So like angel, when you said angels in that, or watchers or whatever, angel is a job description. Watcher is a job description.
Right.
And I believe cherub and seraph are job descriptions as well. Yeah. Just like Bene Elohim or Bene Ha Elohim. You know, the sons of God.
We're not told what they were, what Anubis. You know, and of course, it's debatable whether Anubis was a Nephilim or one of the fallen watchers.
Sure.
But we're not told what Anubis actually was.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
God created a lot of different creatures. And if we think in his kingdom, he didn't already have a lot of different creatures, then,
Sure.
you know, I love the way the artwork that you have is showing, you know, the head of a bull or the head of a
Right.
lion and things like that, because it's very Ezekiel.
It's very Ezekiel and Revelation, which
Yes.
Revelation is pulling on Ezekiel, but yeah. And I do that as a choice. So people say, do you really think there are four? Let's use this as a segue there. Do you really think there are four orders of angels? There's warrior, messenger, ministering spirit, minstrel. No, I don't. However, those faces were included in Ezekiel and Revelation. So I've got biblical references for them. They're imagery that works with the biblical narrative, and there's meaning to it. And if you look, here's my take. So this is my hot take here. Okay. When you see, because people are like angels don't have wings, and Heiser was that way too, and all this. Yes, when it's called an angel and they're appearing, they just look like a man or a really awesomely impressive man, you know. And the be not afraid is never like we see on the internet, and there's this crazy, weird, freaky thing saying be not afraid, you know. No, it's a man that is still so intimidating. They're bowing or whatever it is, and they're saying, you know, don't be afraid. But then at the same time, the angel of Yahweh shows up, which is debatable if that's Christ or not in many cases. But the angel of Yahweh shows up, and sometimes they don't even realize it's not a person,
Right,
until he does something, you know, like burns up
then you do have
sacrifice of
around
vanity.
the throne, and you've got the 6 wings.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there is something with God that does have wings.
So and what I do with that is the wings are not lit. Okay, let me back up. The way I go with it is this: when angels or whatever are appearing to humans, manifest, or at least visually manifest, to deliver a message to them, they look like they speak your language. They look like you enough. They don't want to distract from the message.
Right.
So they're there for a purpose, and they appear in a way that will work for that purpose. But then you have prophetic visions where the idea is supposed to be their eyes, whether in a vision or in real life, are opened into the spirit realm. And then they see these weird symbolic, imagery. And my thought is this: I think it's all, and this is the way I go with it in the game. And I don't know if it's real, but we have a very material world. I'm knocking on my desk here, my wooden desk, you know, because the nose I have doesn't say anything about me. It just says stuff about my genetics. That's really my parents. And then here I am. And these are the genes I got. And this is the nose I have.
Yeah.
It doesn't communicate anything about me. Now, what I do with myself, how I care for myself or groom myself, that can say things about me or the day I've had.
Right.
But yeah, being a parent, we had to throw that one in there. But these faces say something. The wings, the number of the wings might be saying something. It's they're appearing. So rather than them being material, they don't have genetics, they don't reproduce and all that. They're not supposed to. Sorry, watch or dig.
Yeah,
there.
yes.
But so their appearance says something. So do I think that God really said, okay, warriors, and you have lion faces? No, but the imagery there is in the game too, is you were created and I gave you this purpose. This is the way you will serve me. And the lion imagery represents that. And so
we see that throughout history in the ancient carvings, the writings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it definitely, I mean, even in the stars in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you choosing to appear in the spirit realm with that lion face most of the time, you know, is your way of embracing my purpose, God's purpose he gave to them in the game, in the lore. And so that's them walking out that purpose that he gave to them and embracing it. And so you can have the multi-mixed faces when you have multi-orders. You can have any combination up there. But check this out. The faces represent also imagery related to Christ, all 4 of them. So you've got in there, and then the opposite sides, and they seem opposite, but so you've got, I'll go with the easy ones first. You've got the eagle, which often is divine imagery, related to divine imagery. And then you've got the man face, which Christ, again, you've got the divinity of Christ and the humanity of Christ that he took on. You've got these two in the north and the south. And then you've got, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see those. With the 4 characters here in a second. Yeah, right in there. So then normally the eagle would be north, and if in Ezekiel's vision, the eagle would be north and the man face would be south, because it came from the north and it was facing him. And it said that they didn't turn, And then you've got, and it really depends on how you translate it, because different people interpret it differently. Is it saying on the being's right or on the right, meaning Ezekiel's right? I don't know. But on one side, and I go with the east because of Judah camped on the east, but the lion side on the east, and then you've got the ox on the west. And so, but it could be switched, and that's okay.
Ephraim and Manasseh was.
Yeah, so exactly. So then the lion imagery is the Messiah that they wanted, they expected, and were waiting for, the champion, the ruler.
Yes.
I'm going to, and then you've got the burden-bearing sacrificial servant, which is, you've got Messiah ben David over here, and you've got Messiah ben Joseph over here, which is the Messiah they got the first time around. And
Right.
That's represented in the ox. And so, again, you've got these aspects. So as you're role-playing these characters, you're really role-playing aspects of Christ's personality or being. And then also with the wings, what I do with it is whenever you see angels in God's presence, they have the 6 wings. When in Ezekiel, you see them, but they're below the chariot. They're carrying it. So they're in between Ezekiel and him. So they've got 4 wings. So what I do is I use that with the heavens of first heaven, which would be like in Jewish goes way into more heavens sometimes, but the classical most common is you can say there's 3 heavens. There's the heavens, meaning immediate, our air that we breathe and all of that. Actually, that's where evil spirits, the Nephilim spirits, are considered to do. That's why the prince of the power of the air is saying he's prince over those spirits. Right. But anyway, the angels that serve at that lowest level, I call that one set of wings in their first heaven. Second heaven would be in the heavens, but like the atmosphere almost, or toward there, the skies up in the air. And then third heaven is God's presence, where God dwells. And so that's kind of what we do with that. So as you gain in tiers, your characters can gain the other sets of wings. But that's imagery. They're not literal wings that they use to fly or anything else. Right. It means something.
Right.
Yes. So I know I went on at length there, but I hope
I love it because, I mean, my book, the first book that I published is on the constellations and prophecy.
Okay.
And the eagle is in there, and the eagle is kind of a protector.
Yeah.
And then, of course, lion, of the tribe of Judah, the king, and yes, the ox. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
Represented. I know they represent cardinal directions. He said that they line up with Babylonian astrology charts, but I looked at them and I can't piece it. Maybe I don't know how to interpret them.
Yeah, going back to the Egyptian Dendera makes more sense.
Okay.
So that's where I went with it.
Ultimately, point being, in that Ezekiel vision is like, oh, we miss out when we start drawing freaky things and saying, here, biblically accurate angels. We're really missing out on the beauty of what that image was. These people are in exile. They've been taken from Judah and from the kingdom of Judah at that time, but from their land, and they're brought to Babylon and Jerusalem. You've got the temple back in Jerusalem where God is. And he's always said, I don't dwell in temples made by the hands of man and all these things. But yeah, I'll put my presence in. But he's telling Ezekiel, look, this same stuff, you've got 4 cherubim, 2 over the ark, 2 with their wings in the Holy of Holies. You've got in the temple in Jerusalem, you've got Solomon made stands with chariot wheels and things like that. Like you've got
there were angels, I do believe, with wings that were embroidered on the on the curtains. of
Yeah,
the tabernacle
but
as
actual
well.
statue representations, you've got 4 in the Holy of Holies. So what shows up there? 4 cherubim. And the cherubim are always there to guard his presence, or you always see it woven onto the fabric, like you're
Yes.
saying, things like that. So anyway, with that, he's saying, look, here I am. You're not in Marduk's hands now. He's not deciding your fate. I am God of all nations, all directions. I'm not stuck in Jerusalem. I am here. And you're here because I put you here. But
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm deciding your fate. And that message is so much more glorious and touching and meaningful than just trying to discern how weird it could be.
Yeah. And
they understood that imagery.
That's something that I feel like a lot of the conspiracy Christian crowd tend to get so hung up on learning everything there is to know about Nephilim and the Watchers and the different kinds of angels. And it's like, you guys are missing the point, though. We don't know enough about that because God didn't want to focus on that. We have our own host of problems. We are human beings with sin. We don't need to worry about all the other stuff.
I think the Qumran, the Dead Sea Scroll community, where we found this, I think the Qumran community got a little overboard. Yeah. I think that they were hyper fascinated with it.
Yeah. And I get it. It is so easy. Again, like that magic thing you were talking about, it's alluring and we want to learn more. And we so desperately just want to leave this mortal, frail coil. And we want to be heroes, which is what is the draw of the role-playing game.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you're not like trying to hyper focus on that like so many people have, but that you're actually trying to draw attention to the imagery and the meaning behind it.
This is what I think. A lot of people, and not all of them are Christians, when they want to, but some are, when they want to make a game or a world or something, they tend to, there's a lot of wanting to, and I hear some non-produced people and some that have produced things, they tend to want to go pre-flood, because of all the giants and all those things, or they want to go end times, and it broke my heart. Okay, they may be Catholic, they're Italian, so I'm not going to call them out on purpose. But I don't know that they're Christian. But this game called Apocalypse, it doesn't claim to be a Christian game, but it's based on end times, and like but you guys will get it as soon as I start talking. The premise is that that the horsemen came and all that, right? The 4 horsemen. And this is 20 years later. And thank you. And the war is still going on. The horsemen are still there. And the world is basically a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And there's three factions. And these 3 factions, I forget what the name of them are, but Metatron runs the good guys, and you're all humans. I know. I always laugh though. Okay, I have to make my joke here. This is a pop culture joke for not everybody's going to get it, but those who get it are going to love it every time. I talk about how immature, how you notice a difference between rebellious angels and the possessing spirits that Jesus encounters and things like that in the Bible, right? Just a way they carry themselves and everything, right? So I said that, and this is a Transformers joke, but that the evil spirits, the unclean spirits, are the star screams of the spiritual world. When they think that they are in charge and they think there's nobody bigger than them, they are stupidly confident and arrogant and all this, like the 7 sons of Sceva or whatever it is, where it's like, oh, I know of Jesus and I've heard of Paul, but who are you? And they attack him,
Yeah, exactly.
But then when Jesus shows up, they're like, sorry, Metatron. That was my
right.
Megatron. Yeah, okay, sorry. So those who get it love it, but that's the way they are. But anyway, back to this. Sorry, with that, is that they want to go to the old. And so in that, there's 3 factions. They said they have the good guys, that humans that are serving the good angels, and humans that are serving the bad angels. And I think Abaddon is the leader on that one. And then there's this Babylonia is like some third neutral faction that just hates both sides and like, get off our earth. We're tired of you. And if that can happen, so but that isn't the sad thing. If they want to make their game and their imaginary world, go for it. You're not claiming it's Christian. You're free to do what you want to do. I don't have to play it, but I could if I want. You know, whatever. That's your game.
Right.
But so the point wasn't to judge that. But here's what made me sad: there are uneducated, unknowledgeable reviewers that are reviewing this game and happy about it. And here's the thing that they say that I'm like, oh man, they're like, and the amount of biblical accuracy and research that they put into this,
I saw that
really commendable.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And that is the thing, like my agnostic friends that I play games with and stuff, you know, the one that left the faith.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, she's out there because her family did not read the Bible. And she'll make comments all the time about, oh yeah, this is in the Bible and that. And I'm like, where is that at? And we'll talk about it. And she's like, wait, the Bible doesn't say that?
Yeah.
Or, wait, the Bible says this? And it's like, it's a lot of fun having conversation with her. But yeah, she will pick up games like that and go, oh my God, the carrot and stick of the, you know, of the Christian stuff. And you guys are just doom and gloom all the time for this and that. And it's
they
like,
could have picked up what they know from like in this game. They could have picked up everything you see there from like watching Constantine or something. You know, like the movie.
Yes.
You know, like that would have been enough to give them what they used. You know, but wrong and right. But anyway, with it though, my goal is this. So these are people, and creatives want to do this. When I had a hard time with artists wanting to do this, or art directors. That I talked to. Now, Simon is awesome. He does exactly, and Simon, the guy that does my art, he's awesome.
That's why he's hired.
leading up to them, what I kept running into is they want to do things like this, which I get it, but they're like, what if we do this twist on the things with what if the best thing they could describe what they're seeing is a lion? Because they don't know what else to describe it as. And I'm like, but the point is that imagery is a lion for a reason that represents certain things. So if they're just kind of guessing it looks kind of like a lion, that angel's doing a really bad job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know, because you're missing the point. And so what I want to do is instead of using these biblical settings to be a springboard to highlight my own imagination and creativity, I'm trying to use my imagination and creativity to shine a spotlight on what's existing in the Bible.
Yeah.
And in the lore and in the real stuff. That's what I want to do. And I do have an out because you said we're so diverse in what we believe as Christians. It's like same thing. If you want to nail down what did Jews believe back in, it's kind of like saying what did Christians believe now? Like there's a wide variety. But, and I like how, by the way, arguing and debating these things is a healthy part of their culture where we hate it and we split because of it all the time. You know, but whatever. Anyway, what I hope to do is create a game that can be as not neutral, affirming as possible. What I mean is theologically, I'm not trying to state my theology and what I want to promote. I'm just trying to reflect things that legitimately were a part. Even if it wasn't the option, it was an option.
Well, and it gives you a safe place to explore those
That's
things.
what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm looking for.
I encourage people in the comments to, you know, if you disagree with me, please respectfully, you know, be respectful about it. But respectfully, you know, give me correction, give me your perspective, give me your input.
Yes.
And I do try to have people on occasionally that we don't agree on like I said, I don't even agree with myself on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're always learning. I love to teach my kids when I say something and they ask me, what's this? Instead of telling them like it's the fact, I say, well, my current best understanding is this. Yeah. And then I tell them what I understand about what that verse means or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite answer was, I don't know. Let's look it up.
Yeah. And there's sometimes that's my answer too.
Yeah. Because even looking things up, you know, even if it's something that I feel like I've got a good grasp of, looking it up, you can always learn more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It helps so much for them to get their own. My children are more apt to get in trouble for taking somebody else's ideas or, you know, and not having their own thought process on something.
Okay.
You know, it is very important to me that, okay, how did you come to this conclusion? Because if it's because so-and-so said it or something, then no, that's not going to fly here. You've got to have your own thinking about this.
Yeah.
Encourage.
Our older kids were too skeptical. We actually realized we might have, like, they're watching
Might have overdone it.
Every documentary and stuff, and they're like, not true. And all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, they're just, but then there's things where people are teaching them researched well stuff that isn't just a theory of a conclusion based on those two theories, you know, and stated like it's fact, you know.
You want to be able to nitpick.
Yeah.
And still enjoy the content.
Exactly.
You know,
so sorry, we might have got a little overboard here. You can relax.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't soak it up like a sponge and say everything that's being told to you is the way it is. You know, don't be a propaganda sponge. You know,
Right.
Be critical. Yes. Be a critical thinker. Just don't be critical. Be a critical thinker.
Yes. Yeah. The movies and the documentaries and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, we should be able to sit down and actually enjoy it in the process of still, you know, well, this was interesting that they had in there, and you know, how does this apply, and how might we have done this differently?
Exactly.
You know,
Guardians of the Galaxy 2 sparked so much conversation and debate.
I can't even say I really enjoyed that one, but it did.
My wife especially enjoys them out of the Marvel movies. She didn't think she would, and then more than me, she for some reason just really enjoys the flavor of those ones. I don't know.
Yeah, that's Paul. Paul is the same. I'm a geek. I'm a total and complete geek. Paul has his moments in geekdom, but yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the ones.
And see, that's it. My wife is the same way. She has her moments and whatever, but she's not, and it seemed to appeal to her too. So maybe there's something to that. I don't know.
So I know we were talking about this backstage, but we weren't talking about it on recording. So is your game available to play yet?
So quick history is no. The quick answer is not yet. However, people can play test it, and I really need people to get involved in the community and play testing and helping me, especially people that aren't involved in role-playing games already, especially people that don't know, because I need to learn how to present the information, and that's part of the play test we did, but they were experienced people with other games. I need to learn how to teach it to people effectively that don't even know how to play a role-playing game, because my hope is eventually to donate or sell, but hopefully be able to donate copies to churches, with youth groups and young adult groups and whatever, so that, and other organizations, but so that they can, you know, engage in something with this. And so if I can donate those copies, a lot of them, and see, with my youth group, most of them had never played a role-playing game before, and Allies of Majesty was their first exposure to anything like that, you know. So I know that's going to be potentially a large portion of my audience. But jumping back, it's been in development for more than 24 years. I just didn't think that I had a couple opportunities to publish, and God told me both times it wasn't ready yet. One time, actually, the person just wanted to buy the way the game works for his own IP that he had coming out. And God was like, nah, you know, I prayed about it, and that was the answer I got. And the other one, this lady wanted to publish, and then God said, it's not ready yet. This is not the time. So I said, okay. And this was probably 18 years ago on the last one. And so I just assumed it was just going to be for me and my family and my friends and acquaintances. And I said, that's fine, God. And I actually put it on the altar a few different times in my life, figuratively and literally at times. And I said, because I grew up in the churches where you get to an altar and whatever in the front, you know.
Right.
So I had a lot of access to those churches. So I literally sometimes placed it there and said, God, if this is taking too much of my time and attention and it's not pleasing to you, I'll give it up. I'll destroy it. I'll do whatever you want me to do with it, you know, and not book burning, but I'll burn it, meaning I'll get it out of my own life, not because it's evil, but because it is distracting from you. And you have other things you'd rather me do. And so that's remind me to get back to redeeming the time. Okay. That's important, but that's a really important point. But anyway, and he didn't, and then he told me at like November of 2018, hey, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was at a wedding and they did worship after the wedding, they did like worship and it was cool. And I was sitting there just kind of praying and being worshipful. And God said, hey, that dream you had, remember years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, and you didn't know. Well, you're going to publish Allies of Majesty. And here's how that ties to that. I'm like, really? Okay. And then it was shortly after that doors started opening, like people like Dr. Heiser responded to me and were like, yeah. And, so doors were opening to really encourage me to actually do this. And so we're working toward it. I'm paying for things like the art and everything. And I hope to have it available for purchase in the next year or two. It's all up to God, the timing on that. But in the meantime, that website that you had there, it will help you sign up for my monthly newsletters. And it's just a once a month email, comes toward the middle of the month, that just tells you where we're doing things we've been doing. And I try to keep it short, just 3 points and we're done, so that it's entertaining, but not overwhelming.
And that website can be reached by www.alliesofmajesty.com.
Yes, www.alliesofmajesty.com.
Okay.
And
I will put that in the description.
Great. So you can sign up there and then you'll get news as we're developing and going along. But yeah, if you're interested in actually playing ahead of time, then or getting to know it, I'm very accessible. Just you can email me, respond to that monthly email, or once you sign up, it gives you a bunch of ways like Discord, our Facebook group, all that stuff, and you can access me there. And I'm very responsive, so cool.
Yeah.
I'm crazy excited about this. We had so much, and I wasn't feeling good whenever we played the game, and I had a lot of fun. Just like, oh my goodness, I need to, so we're definitely praying that God work this out in His way and His timing, and encourage anybody who's interested in this type of thing. If you have children, grandchildren, a youth group that you're participating with or whatever, that you would be interested in doing this and potentially using it. I just think this is great. I think it's a great opportunity.
It's been great results. I can share anecdote after anecdote after anecdote of one I'll share here this because it's funny. Well, the one without an anecdote, I had it helped these boys that were like backwards and adolescent boys that were not talking to anybody. They were really withdrawn. And a couple in particular that I have in mind, after just a year or so of playing the game, they actually were running the game and coming up and creating storylines and running it confidently and entertaining people and all these things, and they were like really not socially, they were the shy ones, but they were engaged and felt confident. And it really made a difference. And one of the boys was the senior pastor's son. And he said, what are you teaching in the youth group, Anthony? I thought I was in trouble. I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, well, Michael, it's his younger son. He says, Michael's been acting different lately. He said, he's been consulting his mom and I, talking to us before he does things and makes decisions. And he's like, what have you been teaching to make this happen? I laughed. I said, well, that's actually the game, role-playing game. That's nothing about the sermons in the youth group. I said, in the game, he's kind of antsy, and some people get into the tactics of it and they want to confer on how they're going to address the situation, and he gets bored and he just gets distracted and goes off and did things repeatedly that would just ruin the plans, alert the enemy that were there ahead of time, or all kinds of
consequences.
They have consequences. So in our feedback, because we usually do, especially in the youth groups, we did feedback when we're done. Let's talk about it. What did you like about how this person played their character, or what did that character do that was could helpful be improved? Helpful, or opportunities and praise. Opportunities and praise. What are some opportunities that they could improve? What are some things that didn't work out so well, or you didn't enjoy as much? But people could take it. Nobody ever had problems taking that feedback, the critical feedback too, because it wasn't about them. It was the experience with that character. It was very third party. So you put that feedback, and also you even do it to the GM. You say, how could I construct or run things better and all that. We're all getting it. Nobody's above it. And in that environment, it taught them how to speak up to each other and all kinds and receive things.
Yeah.
And they said, look, Mike, I know you're not enjoying this, that part of it, but just you don't have to be, engaged, but before you go off and do your own thing, just talk to us first. Let us know. So you don't just, so we can at least be in the know of what you're up to. And he started doing that in the game, and then he started doing that with his parents.
Yeah, because he learned in a safe environment that like shaved years off of him having to learn that the hard way in real life.
Yes.
And through consequences and other things in real life, that's the kind of stuff that's wonderful. And these people got close. They learned how to work together. And again, that's another thing we saw too, is like, you'd see them start to be able to say, because that confidence, hey, do you think you talked to your mom a little harsh back there? Like, should you have been that? Like they would speak up to each other about this stuff. And then they would go and apologize to his mom or it was awesome stuff. But anyway, about redeeming the time that I was saying earlier, that's another thing that's wonderful about this is it's mixing your fun time with your faith time.
Yes.
And the value of that is it's one of those things. I think that this experience of mixing your faith with your game time, your hobby time, is, I think, many people's favorite ice cream flavor they haven't tasted yet. That's what I think. I think once you taste it, you're like, oh my, this is awesome. I don't want to go back to the other ice cream flavors. They taste bland now, you know, because when I'm able to not just say, well, like one person shared with me, like we were in this game and my kid wanted to just they had a situation. He wanted to pray about it. And he didn't understand that God's not in this world that we have here. And you can't I didn't know what to do with that. So having a game that he could do something with that was invaluable to him as a parent, And so when you have that, it's so great. And then when I'm preparing my storylines and missions, I'm like doing research on ancient church history or biblical things or all this stuff. And so I'm getting benefit. I'm not just spending hours making up and, random make-believe stuff that, you know what I mean? I'm spending hours learning stuff that also has benefit in my real life directly.
Well, that's the YouTube channel. I spend so much time doing research, historical and biblical, and just digging into things. And then I'm able to regurgitate it, to the audience and then get that feedback back. Sure. I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Absolutely. There's nothing like it. So that it's not that it has to be everybody's only role playing. They can play games. Another thing. Here's just some really awesome advantages that I, find in it,
That was something that was occurring to me earlier. It's just like, and that's something I've always wanted with a D&D game is to marry those two things together and have that we're learning on top of having fun.
Well, and it doesn't have to be boring either, in the sense of whenever people try to do Christian role playing, a lot of times what they try to do is still put you as humans. And that's okay. I'm just saying it brings challenges with it. Like, for example, when we're in situations where the probable answers we're going to fight and probably kill some of these people. How do we handle that as Christians, as believers, And so in this game, you're not killing the evil spirits, you're beating them up, or they're beating you up and they'll recover. You're all immortal, and so you're defeating them in that instance. You're defeating them.
Well, and it makes it more of, the whole family can enjoy, because one of my favorite games growing up was Clue.
Yeah.
And whenever I sat down to play Clue with our children, I'm like, oh my goodness. So we made our own Clue game, and the baby lost their toy in the room type of thing. And we made it a big homeschool project.
That's funny. That's great.
It was, and we had a lot of fun with it. And
Professor Plum hid it in the library.
Yeah, I took pictures of the children. They all dressed up as one of the characters, and it turn
Time
something
to
that
win.
I
And
had
put
fun
the
in
bottle somewhere else.
more wholesome.
And in my family, we've ended up taking that. My husband is a former police officer of almost 20 years.
Okay.
And he's turned it into an investigations game.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And teaching them how to be detectives
Sounds
and
fun.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
again, an excellent example of how games can be used as tools.
Absolutely.
They're not evil in and of
And
themselves.
they might find out they like that a lot enough that they might pursue a career that direction and might discover, because that's something that kids don't know what they're going to do with their life. And a lot of times it's because they haven't had enough experiences to find what really clicks with them.
And then the allies of Majesty, the way that you do this, you could really put it in any time period.
You can, absolutely.
You could have the people that they're engaging with or engaging for are in any situation. I mean,
absolutely.
The
possibilities are endless. It's very flexible. As rigid as it is in some ways, it's very flexible in others.
Yeah.
And there are, so it's not everybody's, you're not going to find as much fun if you like discovering weird things that, I mean, I understand spiritual realms, but the world makes sense in this game. So, just making up any old weird, crazy thing. It's, like I said about the spotlight or springboard for your own imagination to, there is a structure and order, but it's like you're not going to be diving through dungeons because these guys can just pass through walls, so it doesn't matter, so there's certain things that are
could be guiding the people that are going.
But exactly, the people can't just pass through the walls, and so that's the thing is it does create some interesting challenges, or from the traditional, but it also creates a lot more opportunities in those ways too than a traditional game. This is not just yet another game with orcs and elves and dwarves, and it's just not yet another. Like, what makes yours? When I start looking at like a Kickstarter or a new product, and I click the button for their video or whatever, and they just start talking about the lore of their high fantasy world, I'm just kind of like, I find myself kind of disengaged, because it's like, yep, the grand wizard came back, or the old gods came back, and
this is more like doing it
and
from
now you got to take them out and save your world.
It's more like doing it from a Levitar's perspective, from that realm, and you're helping them. And you could take it and you could put it in a Lord of the Rings setting.
Sure, that's what.
And as a DM, I can see the absolute potential of driving my players out of their mind by trying to herd cats. I am an immortal being with these powers, and I'm supposed to guide this dude that is dumb as a box of rocks. Where?
Yeah, and stubborn.
He keeps falling into all of these traps. Like, dude, just stop.
Yeah. And so, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of fun you can have with it. And that's the other thing too. The game doesn't need to be stuffy. We have a lot of fun. It's like this. Here's my goal. The lore of the world takes itself seriously, but when we're playing, we're hamming it up and having fun. And if people make dumb jokes, or like somebody wants to manifest their two-handed hammer as a giant spoon, I don't care. You know what I mean? We're having fun. Have fun. I don't think we're insulting God by it, but if your table feels that way, don't, and treat it what you need to do. And I want people to be able to flex it, to how they need and to enjoy it. I want it to be a playground that's there, not me presenting what I think is my accurate theology that you must learn and adhere to, because my point was to make a great game that highlights biblical stuff. Well, my first point was to be obedient because God told me to do it. And then secondly is to make a really great game. And then thirdly, inspire people to want to look deeper into biblical narratives. And that was another thing, meta narrative. I really feel like because we're so secularized as a culture, this is not my comment. I heard another person say this that was a highly educated, I think he was a scholar, but he's saying, but also deals with like surveys and statistics and all that kind of stuff. And he says that he's really seen a move of the younger generation to crave a meta narrative, because in secularizing everything, there's no meta narrative to our existence. telling us
Exactly.
what's the purpose of us being here, and
Yeah.
what's the purpose of you being moral and ethical, and what's the purpose of these things
Exactly.
other than patting yourselves on the back or having your friend pat you on the back.
Yeah.
What is the purpose? Where does this? And so they're craving a meta narrative, and so these spiritual things that provide a meaning to our world are even more attractive.
Yes.
And so I think
Yeah.
the timing may be right, where 20 years ago when I had this idea, it wasn't the right time. And I didn't know the things I needed to know. And Heiser and other people hadn't written their books that have gone in that direction yet. And there's a lot of
The
things.
world is ready for this.
It is now. I think it is. And as far as me setting it on the altar and that kind of stuff, here's a really impactful thing that happened to me. I was praying once again, because I know he wants me to do this, but I was saying the nuance, because I get really analytical about things. And I said, I said, God, I know you said you want me to do this, and I believe that, but is this something you're doing just kind of because you love me? You're letting me do this thing, and you know I'd enjoy it, so you're just kind of giving it to me because you love me, but not really. And he interrupted me, because that's the way God, I often know it's God when he interrupts me mid-thought, because I'll ramble. And he says, just because you're working it doesn't make it yours. And as those words were going through my head, you know how people have said their life flashes before their eyes or whatever. My Allies of Majesty development life was flashing before my eyes in sequence. And there was time after time, like when I was holding my son and I got the idea for the other two orders of angels, and just situation after situation after situation. He's given me the impetus and ideas for certain technology that will help the game as well, and it's timely for that too. And like, he's given me idea after idea, and I realized, oh wait, these instances were him. He gave it to me, and I'm working it and I'm running with it, but he gave it to me. It's his idea.
You enjoying it is the benefit of doing
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm like, okay, God, I can't promise you this, but I don't think I'll ever question you again on this topic. On
that one.
Did you? Yeah. And I hope so far so good. But I never like to promise. I'm like Solomon said, be slow to promise. To God, be slow to make oaths. So I try to be really slow to make oaths. But I was like, I don't think I'll ever doubt on that one again. It's his idea. He's running this thing. He's the CEO, or he's the owner. I'm just the manager of it.
Right.
I'm the steward. I have in my inside of a jackets I got for this, for appearances in this, when I go to things representing it, and I put Allies, because they gave you free embroidery. So inside the jacket I have Allies of Majesty, Creator and Steward, because he's the owner of it, but I'm like, the one with that. So that's the way I view it. It's his thing.
It's his thing, and he put you in management because he knew you'd enjoy it.
Well, he's crafted, he did. And he's crafted a lot of my life, getting me ready for it. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting, because it's been a real journey. We're had to sink some real money into it so far, and all these things, and it's taken a lot of time and effort. If you get into our Wikipedia and other things for the game, you'll see all the amount of development that's gone into it. And it's my privilege, and I can't wait to see where he'll take it. We've been realtors for 10 years together, my wife and I, now, and we've had to live by faith a lot in that, because you never know when your income's coming. Both doing it. One doesn't have the steady, dependable income, and the other of us, we're doing it together. And now we're also doing this together. She's involved a lot, and it's a real blessing. And I said, as nerve-wracking as it is, and when things get really hard and I don't know where the next, you don't have anything in contract right now, and I don't have, and if I did get something in contract, it'll probably be another month before I get paid on it, at least, and we're in those situations. And in the worst of it, I say, I can honestly say to Esther, my wife, Esther, I would never trade it, though. To live this intimately in faith with God is just, there's nothing like it. And anyway.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I think we will close on that. We've gone an hour and a half, and this has been a wonderful conversation. Hopefully some of the people that pick this up and do this will definitely get in contact with you and
Go to
And-
alliesofmajesty.com and sign up.
For
Yeah.
some reason, the www needs to be there. I don't
They
know what
do.
the problem is. So definitely do the www.alliesofmajesty.com.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And it is always helpful in God's work. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.